Hi, I'm Rabbi Ira Eben from Congregation O of Shalom. I'm not an Orthodox synagogue in Merrick, Long Island. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Rabbi Howard Goldsmith from Congregation Emmanuel, a Reform synagogue in Westchester. And this is, once again, sacred texts left to right. We are very excited to share with you a fantastic midrash that Howie uncovered. And Howie, I turn the floor over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ira. So we are in Parshat Yitro this week, the Torah portion in which we receive the Torah from God. It is one of the most exciting Torah portions out there. Of course, every Torah portion is exciting, but this is a really good one.
Some are a little better than others.
Some are better than others. In any event, so the rabbis in the Talmud like to discuss this portion because receiving the Torah is kind of a big deal. And in Shabbat, Tractate Shabbat, 88 and 89, we find a wonderful midrash about receiving Torah. So it turns out that when Moses, according to these rabbis, when Moses ascended Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, the angels said to God, "Why are you giving Torah, this perfect work of wisdom? Why are you giving this Torah to human beings? Human beings who are simply flesh and blood and who sin and who are just, why are they deserving of this perfect truth?" Interestingly enough, God does not answer them. God tells Moses, "You answer them." And so Moses, through a series of responses, convinces the angels that human beings are indeed deserving of Torah. And not just human beings, but Jews in particular. So it says here, for instance, that in the Torah it says, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the house of Egypt from the house of bondage." So Moses turns to the angels and says, "Did you go out from Egypt?" The angels say no. And Moses says, "Well, that's why we get the Torah, because we went out from Egypt." Another example. What's another good? Here's another good one. It says in the Torah, "Remember the Sabbath day and sanctify it." Moses says to the angels, "Do you perform labor that you require rest from it?" And again, the angels say no. And so through a series of arguments like this, Moses shows that it is indeed human beings that deserve the Torah. And the angels then praise Moses and they receive the Torah. So, not surprisingly, and in a wonderful way, Ira and I have different takes on this text. And I will share mine first. Is that okay with you, Ira?
Go right ahead.
Great. So this text made me wonder who has truth. I was struck by the particular nature of Moses' argument for why the Jews should have the Torah. In particular, the argument about Egypt, because it's only the Israelites who went out from Egypt. And if the Torah in this midrash represents perfect truth, does this then argue that only the Jews who receive the Torah have access to truth? Or can other peoples also have access to truth? There are, needless to say, universal notions in here as well. Honoring your father and mother, needing rest on the Sabbath. These are human needs, not just Jewish needs, which means that truth perhaps belongs to other people. But that first argument, the argument that we went out from Egypt, therefore we should get the Torah, that seems to me very particularistic. And as a Reform rabbi who tries to live in that balance between the universal and the particular, texts like this bother me a little bit because I want to say that we can find truth in other places as well. In any event, this was my initial take, and Ira, I'd love to hear your reaction to my take.
So it's always a fascinating take. Always fascinating to study with you, Howie.
I am fascinating.
You're fascinating. Also, you take a take that I would never take, so you took it. That's not how I understood it, but I'll share with you my interpretation. And in response to you, I'm not sure that's really what the text is trying to convey, but that's how you sort of that's your perspective. And I think the question of whether or not does Judaism have or Jews have the hold on truth. So there's a great commentary in the Seforno, the biblical commentary, I believe, 15th century, on this week's portion. It asks, why is Parshat Yitro the parsha of Matan Torah, the parsha of giving the Torah. The story of Jethro, which immediately precedes the giving of the Torah, it seems completely out of place. And his commentary is that because it is a reminder to us, the readers of the Torah, the text, that Jews don't have the only hold on wisdom. Jethro comes in, he shares his advice. Jethro was the father of bureaucracy, actually, and says, and also the first great listed father-in-law, who tells his son-in-law what to do, right? And he has great brilliance and wisdom, and he's not Jewish. And so this is a great way to show, says the Forno, that Jews don't have a hold on all wisdom. King Solomon wrote Proverbs, and most of Proverbs, if you analyze Proverbs, is not Jewish ideas. They're general ideas of wisdom that he found around that time, that he used to incorporate, to share as Jewish, but it's not exclusively Jewish. So I agree with you. It's not that I agree that Jews don't have a hold on wisdom, although there are those who say, it says in Perkei Avot, turn it over, and everything you'll find in it, that all of wisdom comes from Judaism. So there are those who disagree, but I do agree with you that there is much we can learn from all other cultures and societies, and incorporate it as part of wisdom, because it's all brought in here by God.
And so perhaps what the text then teaches us in having its particularistic strain as well, the notion that the Torah belongs to us because we went forth from Egypt. It says that there are other cultures, other peoples may have their path towards truth, but Torah is our path towards truth. And that while we can learn from others, that the Torah provides us a path of meaning and a path of wisdom through life.
I'll take it one step further, Howie. I'm sorry to cut you off. Yeah. And then one step further, as I always do, one step further is that there's a midrashic text that talks about how God went over to all the other nations of the world and says, oh, would you like the Torah? And they say, what's in it? And they say, well, he says, don't kill. They say, don't kill. Every Tuesday, that's our killing day. We can't possibly with the Torah. But the Torah was given as an opportunity for all of mankind, at least according to this midrashic parable, right? And that only the Jews accepted it and felt it fit in their lifestyle. It's true. It is the exclusive work for the Jewish people, but it was open to everyone. It just, for the Jewish people, it didn't fit it fit best into their lives. It's another how we understand that midrash. And
should I bring up the midrash where God holds the mountain over the Israelites' head to get them?
Har kagigit. Yes, right.
We'll skip that one. I want to hear what how you understand this text.
Okay, so as far as I understand this text, I think that is that we have the angels who are saying that man shouldn't have the Torah. That the Torah is exclusively for a perfect world, and that when you give it to man who is made of flesh and blood and obviously full of sin, then it is profaning the Torah. And how could you give the Torah? And as he said before, I think the way the midrashic text kind of conveys it, it says God's like, well, so Moses, what do you think? Right? What are you going to say? It doesn't answer for them. He says it's up to you. And so Moshe has to come up with responses and say, no, the Torah is made for imperfect man. The Torah is made for imperfect people, and it's there as part of our goal of perfection. You have a whole different world out there that you don't relate to. And one of the things I want to share is that in Jewish tradition, there was a concept of a yeshiva shalmala and a yeshiva shalmata, that there was a school of heaven and there was a school on earth. And in heaven, they studied Torah too. They studied Jewish law. They studied about the exodus out of Egypt, that the angels, according to this tradition, the angels would have a seder and discuss how they were taken out of Egypt, even though they weren't. The angels would have a discussion about how an animal, if your dog or your cow bites another person, how they're responsible according to Jewish law. There was a whole give and take and dialogue that, according to the Jewish tradition, that takes place in heaven, and that is because even though there's no practical relevance, it still gives us a connection closer to heaven. But we're saying is that even it belongs there in Yeshiva Shamala, but it also belongs in Yeshiva Shamata. That even if we're imperfect man, the Torah is there to perfect us, to give us meaning and purpose, and therefore man deserves it and fights for it. And I think Moshe fights for it and says, no, It's absolutely ours. We do deserve it and it belongs to us. And that part of it also, we have to argue and fight for it also and bring it into our lives in this world, even if we're imperfect, as a part of our goal for perfection and improvement.
I love that notion that the Torah is for us because we are imperfect. In a tradition where we are striving to be better, striving to be godly, striving to follow mitzvot, striving to live derech eretz, to live in an ethical and good way, that the tradition works for us davka because we are imperfect. And I think that can be a relief for a lot of people who feel a pressure to be perfect. We live in an age where everybody's striving to be perfect. To say the most human thing, the thing that makes us able to interact with this tradition and with God, is the very fact that we are imperfect. So thank you for that teaching. It's a beautiful teaching to enter Shabbat with.
And thank you for, as always, it's always fun to discuss sources with you and sacred texts left to right. We wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and enjoy the beautiful, exciting portion of Parsha Yitro, as opposed to when we get to Tazria and Mitzorah, which is a little more boring. So, yeah.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
Thanks, Shabbat Shalom.